When it comes to fish tank lights, there are so many options available out there on the internet that I figured I'd throw my 2 cents at you guys and tell you a little bit about the lights that I personally choose to go with. So, as you can see, I have the same light on every single tank. So, suffice it to say, I'm a pretty big fan of them. These are the Stingray models from Finex. And there's a few reasons why I've chosen to go with them. The first reason has to do with the fact that I have a pretty decent amount of fish tanks. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That one is being decommissioned, but that'd be 10. And then upstairs I've got another one. So that makes a total of 11. So, what makes these worth spending the $30 to $40 per light? Because yes, that is a bit expensive for a light. And if you have a bunch of fish tanks like this, one of the more common things to do is to get a cheap garage workshop light and just use those because they are more cost effective. That being said, the one or two things that I particularly like about these are worth the extra price in my opinion. So when compared to fluorescent or incandescent lights, obviously LEDs, which these are going to consume considerably less power. These tanks are powered on with their lights for 12 hours a day, and then for 12 hours a night, they are turned off. So each of these consumes approximately 10 watts, which I think is incredibly reasonable considering that they are also extremely high CRI lights. Now CRI, that might be a metric that a lot of people are not entirely familiar with. CRI stands for Color Rendering Index, and it's rated on a scale from 0 to 100. Now, most general lights are somewhere in the 80 range, which, not great. But, if you've ever dealt with something like photography or videography, you might be familiar with studio lights, which also have a very high color rendering index. And long story short, all that really means is the higher the CRI, the better colors you get from the things that are being illuminated. The things that get light shined on them are more accurate and true to life. Instead of being washed out, you can actually see the contrast between all the various different things. And for something that involves this industry, which contain ornamental fish, ornamental being like an ornament, like ornaments on a Christmas tree, these are little things that you enjoy looking at. So by having a light with a high CRI, you can see so much more because the contrast between all the things that are being illuminated is so much better. You can actually see the differences. So if you have a few things that's like, let's say, brown and then dark brown, well, with a low CRI light, that might just look washed out and they blend together. But with a high CRI light, you can tell the difference between different shades of brown, different depthness of hue in the black colors, etc. Things like that. So these lights have a CRI of around 95, which is incredibly good. Because of that, I can see the tiny little details inside of my fish tanks. This tank has a lot of algae that needs to be eaten up, but that's a topic for another day. The algae is not a bad thing here. So high CRI lights and low power consumption. That's not bad. If you're looking to grow plants, there are better options out there. So if you've looked at a light, you may have seen this chart, where it talks about the intensity of the different color wavelengths that the light emits. For something with very high contrast, you might see, like what we see here, a large spike in the blue color spectrum. But if you want to grow plants, you'd be looking for much more red. So certain plants, or most plants in general, prefer that red wavelength of color because it helps with photosynthesis. That being said, basic plants, low-tech plants, those sorts of things grow perfectly fine with these lights. But if you want to grow high-tech plants, you might want to look at the Finex planted I think it's the planted lights. I can't remember the exact name, but Finex does have lights specifically out there for planted tanks that have high-tech plants, we'll just call them. So, basic plants, not a problem. But we also need to talk about reliability, because the cost is a bit of barrier to entry for a lot of people. At $40 a light, around there, a lot of people don't want to spend that kind of money on it, and that's understandable. So I've had some of these lights now for well in excess of 5 years, without a doubt. They are very reliable lights. Now, they are also very thin lights. That's why they're called stingrays, because they're thin like a pancake. So, they do bend if you put pressure on them, so you just want to make sure you don't put a lot of pressure on them. Finex also will not warranty anything that they consider to be water damage, which, I mean, it's a fish tank light, and it's a fish tank. Water is inevitable. That's why I have glass lids on top of all my tanks. One, to help prevent damage to the light, and two, to help insulate the tank and prevent a little bit of evaporative reduction in water capacity. But, long story short, they do work, and they do work well for a long period of time. One thing that has changed about them is the placements of the power brick. The newer ones will come with the power bricks that are just directly attached to your receptacle, whereas the old ones had a line that gave you a little bit of slack, and then the power brick is down the line. I preferred those, but I have had situations where water ended up trickling down the back of my tank because one of my lids wasn't right, and the bubbles from the sponge filter created water, and it got down there, and it ended up killing the little power box there. But it was easy enough to replace. It's just 4 soldering points, and I was able to buy a new one off of Finex, which they normally don't do, but I was pretty confident. And sure enough, it fixed the problem. So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of options out there, but if you want something done pretty well for a relatively good price, Finex is by far one of the better price-to-performance lights out there. There's ones from, like, the big in-store brands out there that I really just don't think are worth it. You know, Finex, you don't really see them in stores all that often. You mainly see them as an online product only. But they're very much worth the money, in my opinion. That's why I've got so many of them. So, to recap, low power consumption, high CRI, which is fantastic. The luminosity, the brightness that it's outputting is more than sufficient. It's decent enough for low-tech plants, and they're pretty reliable. I've had them for a long time, haven't had to replace any. But, yeah, for what you're getting, you know, the price is absolutely justified. So I figured I would give you guys my explanation of why I've chosen to go with these lights instead of opting for a more economical option.